young women and men need to learn to sit down, keep their mouths quiet, not open up a YouTube channel, not start an Instagram account. When you're in your 20s, you have to learn to be quiet. You have to learn to learn. You have to sit in front of scholars. It's excessive, it's too much, where you can no longer be critical, like, okay, is this husn dhan, or are you actually taking advantage of me here? Because I think you're taking advantage of me. We have a problem with Muslim leadership. Muslim leadership is living a life of fear. A speaker recently came out, a brother is begging him to help.
Yes.
This Muslim, America's Imam, says, brother, do you know what will happen to us do you know what the community will do to us if we sought justice from a sister?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh, I've called you here for this emergency meeting in Vancouver. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome, Sheikh. We have a short period of time. You have a flight to catch, but it's important that we have this emergency meeting because our community is dealing with issues that could become very catastrophic, frankly speaking. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of turmoil with, unfortunately, people getting the wrong advice, people getting the wrong leadership, and people don't know who to turn to right now. And specifically what we're talking about and what we need to address right away is the fact that we have both brothers and sisters, men and women in the community being given the wrong advice of how they should deal with each other, how they should function, how they should set their families, how they should operate within their families. And because of this, we are seeing a divorce, we're seeing children being neglected, we're seeing relationship issues, we're seeing people, frankly speaking, trying to capitalize on this whole chaos. So it's almost like we set ourselves up for these problems, and then we get all these problems. The same people now are capitalizing this and say we have the solutions. And I'm talking generalities right now, but Sheikh, what are you seeing? How are you defining? We need to define these specific problems and issues that are happening in our communities, which is causing the very fabric of our families to be torn.
Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa la adwana illa ala al-Zalimeen. Wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen. Wallahi, you've asked a lot of questions, and that has to be unpacked. However, with the time constraint, and
yes,
we'd have to keep it quite brief. I don't know where to start personally because it's a multifaceted problem, and it's going to require a longer session or a long because it has to do with a lot of problems.
Yeah.
What I see happening, what I see growing is you have young, excited, well-intentioned Muslims and more Muslimas jumping on the bandwagon of life coach, counselor, and all these very attractive terms. In reality, they're very attractive terms, especially when you're dealing with people who are vulnerable, people who don't know whether to turn left or right. Sometimes when I see someone posting themselves, promoting themselves as a life coach, you kind of have to wonder what does that mean? Okay, we're not talking
because you know what it gives? It gives the illusion. See, the thing is that we know what. I think if you look at a person, general person you ask in the community, what can we define as this is bad? Oh, a person who doesn't pray, who drinks alcohol, a person who's abusive, etc., etc.
Right.
So I think a bad person is defined very well. A bad man, a bad woman is defined very well. But then I think what's confusing the people is like, okay, who are the good people now? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like you said, who are the good people that we can follow? And when a person gives themselves these brandings, it confuses people. It starts giving them the illusion, if I follow this person because they're an influencer, why would so many people follow them? Maybe I should follow them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's the other thing too, is when you talk about what does that really mean? You're an influencer. I mean, are you influencing people in good or are you influencing them in evil?
Yeah.
I mean, because you could parade yourself, you could have, I came across one recently, sarahatan, someone sent me, and the photos you'd see, it's as if she's at a modeling session. You see her photo, please don't give me that nonsense of, well, you're supposed to be lowering your gaze. No, she's supposed to have some haya and not portray herself at each and every venue, in each and every opportunity as someone who is doing a modeling session, okay? I asked my wife, I said, hey, can you please see the credentials of this sister? I didn't want to go on her page. You know what the credentials were? The credentials were, I have a few viral videos, I've amassed a good number of followers, and I'm a beautiful woman. These are the credentials. So you have someone who has absolutely zip, zilch, nada, not a scintilla of credentials when it comes to Islam, but he or she's given advice to the Muslim couple on how to operate. So everything is going to be abuse. Everything is going to become the patriarchy. Everything is going to become, well, you have expectations. And it's baffling. But this person should not be allowed to sit on a panel to give advice to couples, especially Muslim couples. Where are you getting your advice, your guidance, your counseling? Where is it emanating from? Where are you getting that? I think this is a legitimate question. And the problem is you're dealing with naive people. You're dealing with people who are vulnerable. I'm not saying people who are in these situations are naive, but we're really in a situation where I'm going to teach you how to walk. I'm going to teach you how to open up the door. What do you mean? We have to really, and I don't mean to sound critical, we have to somewhat get a grip as Muslims, smell the coffee, and you're your own person. You have to have somewhat of a sense of direction. I'm going to show you, you're going to show me what? There are people who genuinely, sincerely, truly need help out there. But there are other people, I mean, not to drift a bit too far, but so I don't lose the train of thought here, is that people have absolutely no religious grounding. Where they're getting their material from is a little bit from Instagram, a little bit from this woman here on social media, a little bit from Facebook, a little bit from Twitter, a TED Talk, and suddenly she's given advice. The biggest issue I find is that you're dealing with people who are vulnerable, people who you can easily take advantage of, even though you don't set yourself out to do that. I don't think there are some out there. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt because we've seen things unfold in front of us where you do see Muslims who are in these positions and situations where they have an influence, they have a clout. But what they're doing is they're taking advantage of good, well-intentioned Muslims who truly are out there begging and seeking help. They're vulnerable. And unfortunately, we're human beings. We fail. We get a bit greedy, right? And we end up given horrible advice. And this is why divorce rates are increasing. We have people who are bereft of any Islamic knowledge.
And you know what I don't like when you just mentioned divorce. I think we need to clarify because you will always have people get up on the minbar, on the pulpit, in front of an audience, and they'll say, "Oh, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum divorced." People divorce all the time, in our history, it's not haram, all of these things. But I think we should understand the consequence of that, because when you're talking about people getting divorced in an Islamic society, you don't have laws that tear apart the family even further. You don't have a system where it basically swallows up people into kufr and misguidance. So if the father and mother aren't there as stewards for the children and the family, then you're having the rest, it makes them far more vulnerable. Right? If you look at the statistics, even from a secular setting, single-parent homes, the children are much more vulnerable to child abuse, to sexual abuse, to physical abuse, to failure, bullying. The list goes on and on. So, what do you think about your iman? You think a person who's in a single, not to say that people who are single parents are failures, but you are setting yourself up.
It's more likely.
It's more likely. The challenge is already great enough with two parents and a whole system in a society that is trying to take you down away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that aside, so we understand that I think we need to avoid divorce because the family unit is literally the only thing that's physically, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's going to protect your family, right? So I think we should understand and appreciate why we need to fight for family. And whether it's sister Instagram influencer wannabe or brother influencer Instagram wannabes, why are there no gatekeepers, or is it possible to gatekeep all the influx of all these influencers?
Here, you know what? Call me crazy. Call me loony. You call me whatever you want. There's something in law. If you break in, and this is something that I've come to recently find out and learn about, is that if you're an attorney, if you're a judge, and you go against some of their principles or ethical protocol, what they will do is called a public reprimand. They will bring you and they will literally they will live shoot everything in front of the whole state to know your name, who you are, what you do, and so on and so forth, because of a case that you handled, that it was proven that you were unethical as a judge, as a prosecutor, as a lawyer, or an attorney, and you're brought. This is something that I believe we need as Muslims. There is nothing left to push these Muslims back or to keep them from doing the ills and committing the atrocities that they're atrocities. It's happening over and over and over again. And going back to what you, to circle back to what you said earlier about, I agree, and that's something that I really believe in, is that when we're talking about divorces today, we're not talking about divorces in a Muslim community where Islam was strong, it was dominant, it was the...
Zina is not rampant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you don't just say, oh, well, you know what, sure, no one's gonna urge you. No one is gonna urge a man to stay with a woman, and no one can urge a woman to stay with a man. But you really have to kind of look at what's out there and what you're setting yourself up for.
Yeah.
And I really, young women and men need to learn to sit down, keep their mouths quiet, not open up a YouTube channel, not start an Instagram account. When you're in your 20s, you have to learn to be quiet. You have to learn to learn. You have to sit in front of scholars. You have to learn the concept of being humble, having some humility, of building yourself up before you give to the world. Yeah. You have people 13, 14, 17, and they have these videos every day, and you have to come again? It's baffling. Everybody's excited just to open up an account, and you have to subscribe to me, and oh, look at me here. It's too much.
Yeah. What do you think has been the main driving force for us to be at this position that we are? Because as you mentioned, we have these people. They're wolves in sheep clothing, leading our community. What do you think is the driving force for this influx that we've opened our arms to accept all sorts of different charlatans to lead our community?
Well, that's the thing, is that, clout.
Yeah.
Listen, we can play on the bandwagon of husn al-dhan.
Yes.
Okay, we can ride that bandwagon. It sounds nice in theory, and it sounds charitable and compassionate and loving and forgiving and so on and so forth. But there comes a time where you can no longer do that, because it's wreaking havoc, it's causing chaos, right? Clout is one, popularity is one, greed is one, right? The love for attention, right? And let me say this right off the bat, okay? If people, they want to hold it against me, so be it. I'm not going to be the first, and I'm definitely not going to be the last. Is that fame and clout has destroyed men. Fame and clout is more prone to destroy women, because women seek attention more than men. Women seek attention more than men, right? Now you can tell me, where's the hadith, where's this, or where's that? This is known, okay? Women seek attention more than men, okay? And the fitna that women pose for men is not like the fitna that men pose for women, right? And although we've talked about this so many times before, but it takes so very little for a man to be distracted by a woman. But it takes so much for a woman to be distracted by a man. Right?
Yeah.
So, and this is something that people are simply not thinking. Here, you know what, to even take it a step further, I think men have to become men again. Men, I think they're overcompensating for the atrocities that happened against women in the past. So now men are going to the opposite side of the spectrum, trying to overcompensate. And in the meantime, some good men, their wives, unfortunately, are trampling all over them. The guy is nice, he's loving, he's caring, he's compassionate. Unfortunately, for some women, that's not attractive. Some women are sick, really. Some women, you give them a good-hearted, hard-working, loving, caring man, and it's not exciting enough for them. They want drama. I'm not to say all women, but some of these men, right, they've kind of gobbled in the culture of husn al-dhan, being loving and caring, and basically his goal in life is to show his present wife how he's a loving, caring man, and he's not abusive like his father. But in the meantime, he becomes gullible, he becomes naive, he sees 100 red flags in front of him each and every day. And every time he sees that red flag, he's convinced himself that I have to have husn al-dhan. Because this is what our culture teaches. Too much of it is bad. When the Imams, when those Islamic reminders that you see online, we're all affected. It's excessive, it's too much. Where you can no longer be critical, like, okay, Is this husn al-dhan, or are you actually taking advantage of me here? Because I think you're taking advantage of me. You're playing me for a dummy. You see all these red flags, and every time you see the flag, you say, well, I have to make husn al-dhan, she's my wife, and she's the mother of my children. You have to be critical too. Well, maybe it's not that. Maybe she's playing you for a dummy. And I think this is what's happening, and no one's sounding off the alarm.
Yeah. You know what I've seen, I've noticed this, that in our community, because the advice or the tempo that's being set by some people who have, you could say, more of a status of speaking within the Muslim community. Not necessarily they have a status of ilm, but they have a status of speaking within the Muslim community. Their advice is so impractical and it's so misleading that what happens is that it's a fantasy version of an advice. Like, it's not something that really deals with the nature of men and women.
It's theoretically, it sounds theoretical.
Yeah, it sounds theoretical. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like trying to create Neverland, but then, the horrors that come out of it, you don't want to deal with it.
Sure.
So then the youth, either they're going through this process, okay, this is how we should be, and they'll end up having a very toxic relationship, and it doesn't last very long, and it's usually bitterness when they separate. Or you have people just delaying. It's like there's such a headache. There's so many things to wrap your head around. Financially speaking, maybe the guy is going to say, hey, is it worth it for me? If I get divorced, I can't see my kid, I'm going to lose all my wealth. I'm going to be the bad guy. So there's psychologically, it's almost like you're defeated before you go in to make that first step.
Sure.
So you become really hesitant to even make a move. For a lot of brothers are like in that situation. And then women on the same on that same token, they're looking at guys that they don't know how to evaluate who a proper guy is, and so they either pick a guy that they're not going to be able to respect, and so they're going to be unhappy, or they're just going to delay it. I just going to get more education. I'll keep delaying it. And so then they get older and they're setting themselves up for not a good future as well. And I see this as an overwhelming trend, and you're going to see the real effects in the next 10, 20 years of all the way that we're setting ourselves up for failure. Now, what can we do as an emergency measure to correct this? Because with the videos we were talking about, some of the situations that have come to light, like popularized on social media recently, how are we going to do some type of emergency measure to correct this, to do something practical?
I've said this before, and I will say it again today, and I will say it later on in the near future. We have a problem with Muslim leadership. Muslim leadership is living a life of fear. A speaker recently came out. A brother is begging him to help.
Yes.
This Muslim, America's Imam, says, brother, do you know what will happen to us do you know what the community will do to us if we sought justice from a sister? This is what and you know what? You can say it's his word against his. Do I believe it? I don't see why I should not believe it. I don't see. But because this meshes so well. Right? Yeah. This meshes so well with everything else that's been taking place in American Islamic dawah or Islamic discourse for the past 20 years.
Or
we're singing tunes to the
sisters.
We're singing tunes to the sisters. It's about their rights. And when we talk to men about their duties. Right? You can't criticize women. Like, criticizing women today, that's like the unforgivable sin. That's a red line you should not dare cross. Right? Women are amazing. They're perfect. You don't criticize women. That's just a no, no, no. Right? And so this is what's contributing to that, is that we're not reminded. We're not reminded enough. There's absolutely no balance taking place. And so a lot of times you're hearing about your rights. You get lost in that world. You start to forget that the world revolves around rights and duties. You immerse yourself in that so much, you become delusional. And this is what we're living in. And this is not to say that you yourself or myself. This does not mean that we're absolving men of their responsibilities. We got a lot of work to do. Okay. The problem is we have masculine women, and we have, if literally, men who are emasculated men. This is what we're dealing with. So the problem is you have two parties who have adopted so many foreign ideas. They're going into a marriage.
Yeah.
The woman is acting more like the man is acting more like the woman, and then they wonder why they're miserable. Now they have PhDs, they have master's degrees, they're each one is a six-figure income earner, but they're miserable together.
Yeah.
They're miserable. Islamic leadership, listen, I like not that he came up with it, but if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
If you're an imam, if you're a da'i, if you're a sheikh, if you cannot stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. Maybe public speaking is not for you. Let people who are willing to say what needs to be said and what ought to be said, allow them to do the job. You please step aside, sell books in a bookstore or do something different, but maybe this is just not your cup of tea. Because you think you're doing good, but you're literally one of the primary reasons why these divorces are flourishing everywhere.
Yeah. You know what, you bring up a lot of important points here. And I think from a young age, if you think about the average kid growing up, how much training, how much advice, how much education do they get to understand their responsibility in that marriage? You know what I mean? Because if you ask yourself, what's going to be the most important, what would you rank as going to be the most important impact in your life? Is it your job? Is it going to be your family? What is it going to be? Because your job, you can get fired, you can change careers.
Sure.
So many different things can happen with a job, right? But we put so much time and effort in our education system in how parents advise children for their particular career and what position they want to try to strive for, as opposed to how many of them say, hey, you know what, you got to develop some skills and responsibilities to set yourself up for a successful marriage, because that's actually going to have the most direct impact on your day-to-day life. You know what I mean? So do you have like skills of how to, say for a woman right now, unfortunately, there's like a taboo. Does the woman have to cook, for the family, or do things for the family, or develop these skills or whatever? But that has a significant impact on the quality of life of that family. You know what I mean? Right. Because now you have two parents that are working, they're eating out from like takeout all the time. They're barely plugged in. Nobody was prepared for that role. They're just like, okay, we're coasting through that. And most times when you coast through something, you're going to end up in a car accident. Right. You know what I mean? If you just if you just turn your eyes off, you close your eyes, you just turn on cruise control, there's only so long you can go straight without getting into a car accident.
Right. Right.
And that's what's happening, is that everyone just goes into these marriages in cruise control, no preparation, getting some buzzword pop, therapy advice and, pop counseling advice and things that have been co-opted from like secular courses and stuff like that, and just Islamicized and packaged together, and then you're fed, and it sounds really nice, but it's not like really practical. And then you go off into the world, and these people have no preparation, and then they get into this car accident. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what we mentioned. I think even in the conference this weekend, in yesterday's lecture series, is that the average Muslim, prior to their marriage, would have watched Allahu A'lam how many minutes or how many hours from Instagram to Twitter, Twitter to Facebook, Facebook to TikTok of marriage counseling advice.
Yes.
From average people. And oftentimes it's usually from, I'm sorry to say it, it's from degenerates. Don't tell your man shouldn't have a say on what you do. Why do you have to ask your man? You're your own person. You don't need a man. Be independent, and all this extra language. And so they go in, they're Muslims, they pray 5 times a day, they do Ramadan, they eat biryani, they do all of the above, but they go into marriage and all of that's going to shape how they think, that's going to shape how they view the world, and that's inevitably going to shape how they treat one another as a couple, right? And I think, again, we're afraid of simply telling them what the religion of Islam entails. We're afraid of holding people accountable. Everybody who should be held accountable today, we're treating them as a victim. When you start messing around with that very intricate balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in this universe, everything else is doomed to ruin. It's a balance. It's very delicate, right? وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانَ. There's a balance there that Allah put for a reason. You start playing around with that balance, you're going to start creating holes. When you create holes, you're going to start patching. When you start patching one, you're going to have to patch another. You patch another, you're going to have to patch the one right after that. So now you're basically on a road of endless patching work. But if you were to just allow things to be organic as they are, you don't have to now be on this long journey of patching.
Yeah.
Allow things as they are. Tell women what they need to hear and tell men what they need to hear. They want it. This is what Islam is. I can't bend it for you. Why does the world have to change for you? Why is it not you having to change? Why do we have to change the masjid? Why are you not willing to change?
Maybe we need to get I think we need to get we need to seek real examples of people with knowledge who have led really practical lives, who've righteous lives.
You have marriage coaches. I don't mean to cut you off. Really, forgive me. I'm a little bit excited today.
Yeah.
You have marriage coaches who are single.
Yes. Yeah. That's true.
Come again? I don't know what's worse, being divorced 10 times, right?
Yeah.
Or never being married. You've never been married, but you're given all this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I think we need to seek real people, because those real people who have ilm and experience, they're not putting themselves out on camera, frankly speaking. They're not talking about, oh, I've been married for 25 years, we have this many children, they're hafad, they're this. These people aren't, they're actually, what I used to, the observation I used to make is that a lot of these people who get sometimes involved in politics, public, positions of any sort, they actually don't have enough in their personal life going on. That's why they have the time to do this. Many people who are busy raising good, righteous families and putting together like something, positive, they actually don't have a lot of time, extra time, to do all this other stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm highly skeptical a lot of times of somebody who has somehow an immense amount of, we were talking before how long these things are to set up, right? Yeah. So inherently my red flag goes off. My alarm system goes off. Like, is this, person someone I want to take any advice from?
It's a little fishy.
Because I know what it takes to raise righteous, children, to spend time with your family, with your parents, with your in-laws, with your wife. Like you need to put in quality time for that. So how are you going to be somebody that's able to be successful in hustling online? So I think what we need to do to counteract that, because you try to sniff out the grift, right? So somebody who doesn't have so much going on, so they come. Like I say, it's like a person being on a school board who doesn't have any kids, and they put in all this indoctrination because they think this is what a perfect life in a world should be like. Right. But it's not your kids that you're indoctrinating. Right. You know what I mean? Right. So I think what we got to do is we got to find the good people in society, and we need just literally an independent, I would say, social media team that gets these people's stories and puts it out there and say, these are the real examples. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we don't have to ignore maybe the social media aspect, because how do we balance that, right? Because I think that's what we want to do in this emergency meeting. It's like, there's this wave of fitna, there's these influencers who have no real practical life. Their own lives are in shambles. Their own lives in shambles, and you're giving somebody else advice. Exactly. They don't go, the sunnah is not the center of their life. They co-opt things from different courses, and they try to they put a little bit of dates on and a few crescent,
Islamify.
You just put it,
Islamify.
Yeah, exactly, right? Give it a little bit of Islamic, and put a little bit of green coloring and stuff to make it look like it's Islamic cake, and then they present it to you, but it's just some secular course that, was market tested to be popular amongst people, and now you just co-opted it so you can utilize that market testing. But now, what do we have? All these people are just in chaos because you've just been given this false, promise, right?
Here's another thing, and maybe we'll end by this, Dr. Syed, is that people, and I said this before again, I hope I'm not sounding like a broken record, but people have absolutely no idea how skewed and corrupt their way of thinking is. You can't watch Hollywood for so many years. You can't watch Bollywood for so many years.
Netflix.
You can't watch Netflix for so many years. HBO, if you were to literally count the hours of the content that you've taken in over the span of 5 to 10 years, you have a lot of detoxing that you have to do before getting into marriage.
And you don't even know how much damage it's caused to you.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually are not self-aware of that because you don't have people around you close, because we've isolated ourselves.
I think it's worse than that. When you say they're not aware, you're being. I think that's being modest. they think they got it all figured out.
Yeah.
It's not that they're not coming into marriage with humility. Hey, this is new for me. This is a new union that I'm getting myself into. I have humility. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to look up to the elderly. They walk in with so much arrogance, and they actually look down on the elderly. They look down on the auntie or the uncle, right? So you're at a loss here. So I think Muslims have to have some humility, right? Maybe the sheikh, the masjid is not the problem. Maybe you've given too much of your precious self and the limbs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed you with. Maybe you've given too much of your time, of yourself, to those who don't deserve it. And this is perhaps why you're suffering. And this is why we Muslims have to understand, seeing things that are haram, listening to things that are haram, comes with a hefty price.
Yes.
You spending 45 hours on social media and TV and Netflix daily, it is going to come with a hefty price. And sometimes, do you know what that hefty price is? Sometimes it's your iman.
Yeah.
Allah musta'an. JazakumAllahu Khairan for having me, Dr. Syed.
JazakumAllahu Khairan for giving us this time for this emergency meeting. I know you have to rush off to the airport. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you a safe flight, return back home, and bring you back to us again, inshallah ta'ala. JazakumAllahu Khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.